Perfect. Welcome back to At Your Service. This is a weekly live stream where I have conversations with seasoned service-based business owners. I have the privilege of interviewing someone who is very well known in the legal community on Long Island, and I would say other parts of New York as well. Tim, pleasure to be chatting with you today.
Thanks, Brandon. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Why don't you give us a little bit of a background as
Sure.
to how you got started?
Oh, how I got started. Well, I guess I'll start with a little bit who I am now, and then because I think that'll reflect on how I got started. So my name is Timothy Wan. I'm currently the senior partner at Smith, Carroad, Wan, and Parikh. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I've been at this firm for 24 years.
Wow.
I started as, a junior associate, moved up to senior associate, became a partner. And then when the prior partners all died or retired and left, I became the senior partner in 2017. When the last senior partner passed away in 2017, we had 11 people. We now have 28 employees.
That's incredible, Tim.
Yep. And around that same time, I also created a separate law firm. So I also not only have Smith, Carroad, Wan, and Parikh, but I also have the Wan Law Group. So while Smith Carroad does predominantly commercial litigation and collections for business owners, Wan Law Group is more of a hands-on, almost outside general counsel for businesses that don't need an in-house counsel. They don't have that daily need. Maybe they don't have it in their budget, but they still need someone who understands their business and can be basically their general counsel who just happens to be outsourced.
That's awesome, Tim. Yep. And out of all of the areas of law that you practice, which is your favorite?
Oh, my favorite. My favorite really is intellectual property, copyrights, trademarks, protecting the business for seeing what creative people do. I guess you hit on like, where did I get my start? So if I can hijack your own questions and kind of jump into that. I didn't always want to be an attorney. That wasn't my path. When I was in 4th grade, I got the lead in the play. We did Around the World in 80 Days, the musical, and I didn't try out for it. The teacher just assigned roles. She years later, I asked why, and she said it was based on grades. Whoever got the highest grades got the bigger parts. She said they could memorize she figured they could memorize the script. So I got the lead in the show, and I remember standing on a stage, getting a standing ovation, because that's what you do for 9-year-olds, right? Your parents and grandparents are going to give everyone a standing ovation. And I remember standing on that stage going, I love this. I want to do this. So I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be on stage. I want to be on Broadway. Went to school, did 12 years of music, theater, voice lessons. Went to college at Vassar for theater. Took music there. Thought I was going to be famous. Started, I always had the lead in every show. I was the villain or the dad or the king, or, I always had a featured part. So I thought I was going to be famous. And after about maybe 2 dozen failed Broadway auditions, and never getting anything, my grandfather said, all right, law school or business school. So I went to law school thinking I would do entertainment law, such as, intellectual property, copyrights, trademarks. And I cut my teeth working at HBO and Island Records and Palm Pictures in the entertainment industry. Didn't like being on the corporate side, and then went to the artist side. And I realized that I like to eat and pay rent, and you can't do that when you're on the artist side. So I came back home to Dix Hills, where my parents were, looking for any job I could find. And that's when I found Smith Carroad, which happened to be in Comac at the time, 7 minutes from my house. And I said, I don't know what collections is, but it'll pay some student loans. And here we are. So that was my path.
Wow, Tim, that's a pretty incredible journey. And I didn't know that you wanted to be an actor. I've actually done stand-up twice, and acting is a passion of mine as well. So
Yeah.
it's really,
that's great.
It's really, really interesting.
Stand-up is hard, man. Stand-up.
Yeah. It's
I did a little bit of improv.
Stand-up is very
hard.
hard.
A little bit of
Stand-up is
sketch comedy, but stand-up is hard. You have no crutch. There's no one else to rely on.
No, and it's all live too, so it's not like you could do a retake like acting.
Right.
It's very difficult actually.
Right. But I like the stage because there was a
But,
script. Yeah, there was some improv, some changes, but you still had a script. You still had a cast. You still had a path to follow. Stand up, it's man, you're out there on your own and sink or swim.
yeah, 100%. It is certainly scary. Wanted to ask too, Tim, when you first started out, being an attorney, from your perspective, what was one of the challenges that you faced initially, and how did you overcome it?
Sure. I mean, I think the biggest thing is finding the balance or finding the way to be an attorney and be a business owner. There's a lot of great people out there who are great attorneys, but they don't know how to run a business. And then, of course, you have the flip side, right? You have some great business owners who may not necessarily be great attorneys.
Mm,
You can have both, but it's a really separate set of skills. So I realized, I was really good in court, as you can tell. I was really good at trying a case in front of a judge and jury is like being in front of an audience. So that was never the problem for me. But I knew less of how the business ran when I started my career, and to figure out that transition and to make the move from, all right, I'm handling cases and winning, to, all right, what's our cash flow position? How do we expand the business? How do we develop more? How do we save on costs and improve profit? That's a different skill set than going and winning a case.
right. Yeah, no, being a business owner, you have to wear a few hats. You have to know how to sell, you have to know how to manage people once you do start to
Right.
scale, and you have to know, um, you know, y you also have to have that subject matter expertise, which, from my perspective, a lot of people, when they first start out, they're really great at being subject matter experts, but when it comes to hiring people and when they have to delegate, managing is just a whole nother skill set, which there's a
Right.
learning curve to it over time, definitely.
Right.
Yeah. And there's a lot of attorneys out there. There's a lot of law firms, especially in New York. There's just a tremendous amount of law firms. What makes your firm stand out from your competition,
Yeah,
would you
I mean,
say?
I like to say I don't have competition. um, there's a lot of firms that do what we do on the collection side, representing businesses, trying to collect for business owners. But there are firms that represent, large financial institutions, banks and credit card companies and things like that. And then there's a lot of other firms that do a little bit of what we do, but they also do wills and trusts or real estate transactions or
Mm,
personal injury. And I find that those attorneys, um, they may be good at one skill, but those are different areas of law and different expertises. So we are kind of that middle ground. And I find that we've kind of found that middle ground, that niche where there is an underserved population of businesses that don't have an attorney that do what we do until they can find us. So your big credit card companies, there's a lot of law firms who'll fight for that business, representing the credit card companies, the banks, the big financial institutions. We cater to those businesses that are mom and pop shops, smaller business owners, closely held corporations. Doesn't matter how much money you make, but it's about businesses that don't have a board, businesses that don't have all that corporate structure. They don't necessarily get the same attention. And the other interesting thing is just there's a lot of lawyers that cater to advocating for the little guy, the consumers, protecting civil rights. That's all very noble, all very good, but there's this gap in between those consumers and advocating for the little guy and protecting and helping big business where there's a lot of money, which is, what about those small businesses? they kind of get lost in the shuffle, or they get painted with the wrong paintbrush. They sometimes people think that small business, that plumber or electrician who doesn't get paid has the same kind of documentation that the big credit card company has. They don't. They have different problems, and the government and the law doesn't always see it the same way. That those are different beasts. And similarly, when people say, "Oh, we need to protect consumers, we need to advocate for the little guy," well, the landscaper that I represent, even though he didn't get paid, and I'm trying to enforce his rights, he is the little guy too. And people forget that. So I think that's what we kind of distinguish ourselves, is because we appeal to that market, that little guy, that startup, that mom and pop shop who needs a lawyer, needs the help, and doesn't appeal to the two sides.
That's awesome, Tim. And right off the bat, it's very easy to tell how you do stand out because you have a lot of self-awareness of who your ideal sort of client avatar is.
Right.
You have a very good idea of who you specifically want to target, which I think is important because if you go after everybody and if you market yourself as sort of a generalist, it's hard for you to find a niche and kind of stand out from everybody else.
Yeah. Like I've always said that, in this day and age, let's say you tear the ACL in your knee, you don't go to your general practice doctor. You're not going to the dentist that you're friends with. You probably don't even go to an orthopedic surgeon, right? You're going to the ACL specialist. That's who you go to. Is you go to the guy who's doing, or gal who's doing the ACL repairs all day, every day. You're going to that specialist. And I feel like as an attorney, especially in New York, where you said there's a lot of attorneys, we are kind of, for lack of a better word, we have that specialty of being that small market mom and pop shop representing that little guy, but not defending, the individual in their civil rights or consumer rights. That's not what we're talking about, but on their business side, representing those small businesses. I really think we found the niche because we saw the need.
That is super well articulated, Tim. If you aren't an attorney, I think you'd be an awesome business coach. So if you ever need a second career path, that's one to keep in
well, that's kind of what One Law Group is, right? As a general counsel for a small business owner, I'm the one kind of coaching them a little bit, kind of taking them through some of those things, and making sure that they're protected legally. So it is in a way business coaching because I'm giving advice. I'm giving legal advice, right? Like how to structure. Do you pick an LLC or an S corp? Do you or a C corp? Or do you have that relationship with that vendor? Is that going to be an employee? Is that going to be an independent contractor? What are you going to do? How are you going to structure that? How do you structure that relationship with your business partner? Those are all kind of like the fundamental things that, in a way, I am a business coach, but I'm worried about those legal aspects. So I'm not like the guy who's telling you, what your brand looks like or how to market. That's not me, but I'm making sure that you have those fundamental background coaching sides or on that coaching side, which is that you've got those things in place so that you're not caught with your you're not caught in a jam, or you're not caught not being compliant with some regulations.
For sure it's super important to have all of your ducks in a row from a legal perspective. So you don't get audited, so you don't get sued. It's absolutely imperative.
When you sue, or when you need someone, so when someone breaks a promise to you, that you're able to enforce your own rights as a business owner, right?
That's very, very well said. And I think about it from a real estate perspective as well. It's like when I buy a property, I make sure that it's in its own LLC and that I'm not buying properties under one LLC. So I'm protected if there's a problem with one of the tenants, or if I have a vendor like a landscaper, a contractor, a painter, and if they get injured, then they don't have access
under that policy. Exactly. And just to tell you, there's even more to it than that. Let's say you've got a great property that you're using, and it's a rental property, and it turns out that maybe that person wants to buy that one property. They can buy that property. They can even buy that LLC from you. Whereas if you have many properties owned by the LLC, now you've got a different analysis, right? Now it's an asset within an LLC. Maybe it's more beneficial to your tax burden, and obviously I would defer to accountants on that, but maybe it's more beneficial in that situation to have the person buy the LLC that owns the property. Who knows? Or
Very, very
right,
well said. Yeah, absolutely. I ran into a situation like that last year when I had the option to buy the LLC versus the property.
right.
Ultimately, there were way too many issues with that particular property, but it was interesting because I never thought about it from that perspective to buy
The
the
company,
LLC.
right? You buy the company, and there's also things like, let's say you own one property outright, and then you have another business partner who comes along, and your buddy, your best friend, and you want to buy this other property with them. Then you don't have to dilute your first LLC or your first company or your first corporation to get into business with another person on something else. You can keep those assets segregated and separated. So that's the kind of counsel I do give. So in a way, I am a business coach as it is, but I'm just looking at it through a legal lens.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Tim. I feel like I should be paying you for this advice because it's so perfect. I appreciate that,
You
Tim.
can buy
And
me a drink next time I see you.
110%, 110%. And you obviously have a few types of clients that you market yourself to. But if you had, say, like a magic wand, who would be your ideal type of a client for you?
Yeah, I think that I wouldn't say ideal. I don't have a specific vertical. I'm a
Hmm.
very narrow horizontal across pretty much every vertical.
Mm,
Everyone has a customer or client, whether they're a landlord, a medical provider, a digital marketing company, an attorney, an accountant. You all need to make sure you have the right customer agreement, and you all need to make sure that you have your corporate structure in place so that you can protect yourself. But I would say if I have kind of a favorite, I do love working with skilled trades.
okay.
Um, the skilled trades tend to be really good, like you said, really great subject matter experts. The electrician, the plumber, the contractors, they're really good at what the landscapers, they're really good at what they do. And I feel like they're providing a service that will never go away, right? There's no trends on whether or not everyone needs indoor plumbing, right?
Yeah.
At least not right now, right?
Yeah.
For the foreseeable future of our lifetimes, we all need indoor plumbing. So you need a good plumber, and if that plumber is not encouraged to do their work, we're all going to be in trouble. Whereas you can see there's some other industries that ebb and flow with technology. Plumbing's not changing. So when you have the guy or girl who's a really talented plumber wants to get their business going, they don't know how to do it. I want to make sure that that stuff is set up for them properly,
Right.
and make sure that if and when they don't get paid, we enforce those rights and go after their customers and clients who didn't pay.
100%, Tim. You have to bring the hammer down and you have to
Absolutely.
be a hero for your clients.
Yep. And if I could say what I always say is, my daughter, when she was in kindergarten, I mean, she's in high school now, but when she was in kindergarten, she said, "Daddy, what do you do? Do you put people in jail? Do you do divorces?" Like, she didn't know what a lawyer was, and it was really hard to explain to her. Here it is. I'm, explaining to you in the last 15 minutes, and yeah, and you're a businessman. Like, you get this stuff, and you're thinking, "Wow, what Tim does is kind of unique. It's kind of specific." So I explained to her that what we do is we make people keep their promises.
Mm,
That's kind of how I boil it down. And sometimes I'll help you devise what that promise is with the person that's making that promise to you. And once that promise is made, I make sure that they keep it.
absolutely. And, having a third party there, I think is so imperative because it doesn't put the onus on one of the business partners versus the
Right.
other. You have th- the third party who has no financial incentive, obviously,
That's
than
right.
your fee, but there's no type of commission structure like that.
Right.
So,
I love working with especially like mom and pop shops, or like when parent is turning the business over to child. I
mm,
love those situations as well. So it's not industry specific, but it's situationally specific, because parent knows that they've got to have an exit strategy. Maybe they're about of retirement age. The
mm,
child wants to take on the business. The child has new ideas, wants to do that transition, and I come in to represent the business, not one or the other. And like you said, kind of act as a third party, almost a mediator sometimes, and get them to come together and memorialize that agreement. And as far as fees go, I'll just share this: is I really hate working hourly. I don't like doing it. I much prefer knowing what the project is, having a consultation with the client, and then coming back and saying it's going to cost this amount of money. Here's the flat number. So going back to like contractors, the same way that you have a contractor in your house, hey, I want to redo my kitchen, and the contractor tells you it's going to cost you this amount of money, and you decide if that's the value that you're willing to pay. If it is, you go forward. That's the same thing with me. I'd like to give a quote, whether it's doing an operating agreement, whether it's doing a non-disclosure agreement, or whatever. Here's the number I think it is, and if you think that that value is appropriate, pay me, and I'll get you your product.
That is very, very well said, Tim. Yeah, no, it's, you know, to all the people out there listening, hire an attorney, hire Tim, because he's very, very good at what he does, and he will make sure that he's the third party that has no financial incentive either way.
Thanks for that, Brandon.
Of course, Tim. And, you know, I think people enjoy doing what they do for a variety of reasons that are unique to them. But for you, why do you enjoy being an attorney?
I really like people. I really just do. I like being around people, talking to people. Obviously, I'm here and I'm enjoying this. I'm sure that you've interviewed some people who don't quite enjoy it as much as I do. I was super excited to do it, right? I mean, they're very wise or very intelligent, very good at what they do, but maybe not have this kind of interaction or thrive on it. I kind of thrive on it. And I think that being an attorney gives me that being an attorney gives me that platform to do what I love. We just talk to people, be in front of people. And I'm also very lucky. I have a great team behind me. My law partner, she never wants to be in front of an audience. She doesn't even like talking to the staff. You know, she doesn't even want to give a toast at the holiday party, right? She's shy about that. But yet, when it comes to, you know, going through the paperwork, checking for mistakes and quality control and operations improvement, she's on it. But her having that allows me to have the ability to, you know, come on these things, do this with you, do speeches in public, you know, teach seminars, things like that.
Yeah, and you said something that's an amazing takeaway. Do you feel like it's important to have skill sets that kind of, or I should say skill sets and maybe even personality traits that kind of complement each other when you have a business partner?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, here's a nice softball question you just gave me, Brandon. Now, I actually make everyone take a personality evaluation when we hire them, so we can make sure that the duties that we're giving them align with what they want to do. And I tell them, take the test. There's no right and wrong answers. We just want to make sure that we're giving you we're putting you on the right team, we're putting you in the right group. I also feel like every team has to have different kinds of personalities. You know, you've got the personality who's the person who's going to try to be the peacemaker. You might have somebody else who's the person who's going to get stuff done. Someone else who's the, you know, the more technical reviewing type person. The other person who's like, I want to help the whole team. There's different personality types, and finding the right types. And there's a lot out there. I'm not going to plug anyone in particular, but there's a lot of those kind of tests that when you do that evaluation, and I had gone to a business coach who taught me that. That allows you to put together a team that you do have those complementary skills, and you can find a way to maximize the success of a business by having those complementary skills. Otherwise, if you have a bunch of salesmen in a room, they're selling, but they're not actually doing the work, right? And if you have technicians who can do the work, but there's no one selling, then you have no business at all.
100%. 100%. It sounds like you've read, or at least you've heard of the E-Myth.
I have.
Amazing book.
I do a lot of ebooks when I drive.
Yes.
Driving around to meetings and whatnot. I do a lot of listening to books. Granted, I listen to like Star Wars books as well. But I do spend a good amount of time listening to business improvement books.
Yeah, for sure. And another question that I did not email you over. So where do you see your business, call it, in the next 4 to 5 years?
Again, we look for needs, right? So we did one thing just effective last month. is, I am admitted only in the state of New York.
Mm,
And what we do is, over our firm was actually founded in 1930. So we've got a network of attorneys all over the country. So, for example, if we're representing a business that's in New York, but the person they sold to who didn't pay is in New Jersey, then I have to get a New Jersey attorney involved to help with that, right? So being part of a lot of national organizations has given me the ability to have that network,
right.
which is great. And our firm's longevity gives us that network, which is great. But there's certain states where we have a greater volume and there's a lack of attorneys that do what I do. So I have less people to give that to. So we actually just started branching out into Connecticut.
Wow.
We have an attorney
Really?
who's admitted there. Yep. So we have
Nice.
yeah, we just started that. That's about a month in. And I think appealing to the business community there will not only just, bring value to all of our clients, because if they have an adversary party who's in Connecticut, that would be great. So I think that's an expansion, and then who knows if there's other states to follow. Um,
For
I
sure.
think that after we had the pandemic and the shutdowns, that taught us how to go virtual. It taught us how to communicate like we are now, where we may not have been as fluent in this kind of digital language as we were 5 years ago. So now having team members in other states and closing that gap is really eye-opening. So we find the need, we find the opportunity, and move there. So I'd say in about 4 to 5 years from now, you might see us in more than 1 or 2 states.
That, that's awesome, Tim.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I had no clue about Connecticut. We'll have to chat offline about that because that's where I
Yeah.
have
Just
my
started.
roots.
It just started. Yep. I have a really big client, a not-for-profit that's based in Connecticut as well. So I think it was really important for us to branch there. So I have an attorney in my office who's admitted in Connecticut. We have an employee in Connecticut. So I can, obviously give some of my wisdom, but he's the attorney of record. He does anything we need to file cases. He's the guy who's running the show when it comes to that. But we can still do all the background work in our office in the infrastructure we've created.
For sure, for sure. That makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
That's awesome, Tim. All right, so two final questions.
Sure.
The first one is unrelated to what you do for work. So,
Okay.
what is something that nobody or very few people know about you?
My dream role was to play the Beast in Beauty and the Beast,
Wow.
but I never got the chance. Never played it.
Wow. That is really, really cool, Tim.
That's my dream role. Never had a chance. One day, maybe someday.
Yeah, for sure. Would you consider an acting role if it was a small part that was kind of close to Long Island?
Possibly. I've done some. It would matter on what it is, whether
For
or not
sure.
it would. Yeah, but I've done a couple of commercials for some friends and some voiceover work recently.
That's awesome. That's
Yep.
really cool. It's very, very cool. And then the final question, where can people go to reach out to find more about your work?
The easiest way to reach me is email.
Okay.
Tim@wanlawgroup.com. So TIM@WAN lawgroup.com.
It's awesome, Tim. That is awesome and really, really appreciate you chatting. I think you've given the listeners a lot of wisdom, and I really, really appreciate you